Hey everybody, it's Mr. B, and in Music Notes today we're going to be learning all about bass, the fundamental low frequency sound that makes your song complete. So today, all about bass. Let's go. Well, what is bass? Bass is a low-pitched musical part in a song that provides a foundation for harmony and rhythm. We are going to be talking about bass lines, which are created using single notes and are monophonic so that frequencies don't overlap. This is really important. You have to think of bass filling up a certain location, a certain space in your mix, and it is a large frequency. So if you have more than one of the large frequencies playing together, it tends to distort. So it's very important to remember that bass lines for the most part are monophonic, one note at a time. Not like a chord where you can play multiple notes because the frequencies can all harmonize together. Bass lines are single notes at a time, monophonic. So let's go over what frequency ranges basses are in. This is really important because basses lie within a certain frequency range that is the lower range. If I open up Pro EQ and I have my root note bass line right here, so let's open this up. That is the instrument. Okay, let's open up the Pro EQ so we can see the frequencies. Okay. So this is all of the frequencies in sound that we can hear. Everything from about 20 to 20,000. Bass ranges are in between 20, which is the lowest humans can hear, and they can go up to about 100 and maybe a little bit past. Okay, these are large frequencies. They take up a lot of space. Let me show you how notes work. And this is the case for all notes, which are tones. When you see all of these waveforms, the very first dip that goes up is what we call the fundamental note. That is the note that is being played on the keyboard. Okay? Or being played regardless. That is the fundamental. All those other little peaks after it are called harmonics. And that is what gives the sound its timbre or characteristics. So a sine wave would have no characteristics, is just one note. Okay, most other sounds have harmonics after it. So let's look at this. Right here is the fundamental. Right here, this is F, and this is A. These are the fundamental notes. All of this other stuff after it are the harmonics. So your bass range is going to be from about here and end about here. That is your low frequency. All of these other sounds in that bass that I'm playing right now are just extra timbre to make it sound unique. And if I cut out everything from, let's say, about 100 and above, then you'll only hear the sub sound, which is just the bass sound. So I'm gonna actually just go ahead and do that. And I'll make it really narrow. So you can see we don't hear any of that distortion that was giving it its character. This is really what defines this bass sound. And these are really important parts to remember. Okay, so every bass sound is going to be a little bit different, but this down here is really where your bass sound lives, between 20 and 150. Okay. Bass lines support chords by emphasizing the root note. This is really important. Emphasizes the root note or outlines the chord tones. It drives rhythm by locking in with the drums, especially the kick drum. It creates a groove and feel. It can be simple and steady, or complex and melodic. It can connect harmonies with rhythms. It's the bridge between all the pieces of your song. Today we are going to be specifically looking at these characteristics of basses. Okay, these are different types of bass lines that you can include, and we have static, and we'll be going over each of these with the same chord progression, so you can see exactly what each of these bass lines does and feels. As you can see in my MIDI data, here is my notes that I created, and these are the chords. Okay, so we're gonna be reviewing all of these. First, we're gonna start with static. Static bass lines repeat the same notes usually throughout the whole song. You'll hear this in songs like Daft Punk's Around the World, and you'll hear it in songs like Prince's Kiss. So there's a lot of songs that use it, and it can be a very powerful tool. It's very simple. First, let me play you my chord progression. I have two different chords playing. I have a F suspended 2 and an A minor 7. I think I put all of these into the scale of F. Okay, now let's hear the same chords with a static bass line. A bass line that simply is the same note that repeats. In this, I made it with like a specific pattern. And that is a static bass line. Next, let's talk about a root note bass line. Okay, these are extremely popular in pop music and all sorts of different genres. Basically, it's a note that will follow the chord. Think of Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit. So let's play the same chords now with a root note pattern that is following the chords. It's a single note until it changes to the second chord, or whatever chord it happens to be. Up next is a melodic bass line. A melodic bass line is similar to a root note bass line, except that it has some flavor to it. Think of Queen's Another One Bites the Dust. So let's play this melodic bass line that is following the scale of F major. Now let's look at a walking bass line. This is a bass line that follows a scale, and it's very common in jazz and other genres like blues. So let's hear a walking bass line with our chord. A walking bass line is just basically going up and down the scale in some kind of rhythm. Next, let's talk about an arpeggiated bass line. These are really easy to make, and you can have a lot of fun and very creative with them. In this case, since I have my instrument, which is a Roland bass line from a Juno 60, or bass from Juno 60, and that's the same bass instrument that I've had for all of these tracks. The only difference is that I put a arpeggiator, a note effects arpeggiator, on the bass itself. So literally when you look at my bass line, there's just single note that is being played. That's just how this arpeggiator worked. You can use the arpeggiator within any Juno that you're using, or any Roland that you're using or other plugins, but the Note Effects is actually a super fun and easy way to get a really cool arpeggiating. You can even look at my pattern, which is not just so straightforward as on every 16th bar. It kind of adds some character to it. So let's listen to my arpeggiated bass line with our chords. And finally, we've got the classic that everybody really likes adding bass into their tracks, the 808 or the sub bass. Okay, so I've had this sub bass play to a certain pattern. We usually have it complement the kick, but this is a glide 808. You're going to hear one note glide from another, and that is called glide. And instead of using a synthesizer instrument like I did on the other bass lines, this one I used a sampler, and with a sample I tuned it, and then I put on right down here the glide effect, mono glide. So let me show you what that sounds like. And there you have it. We have all these different types of bass lines that you can make. We have a static, which holds one note or simply repeats notes. We have a root note bass line, which mostly plays the root note of a chord, which is an excellent way to make a bass line. At least you can even start with a root note. We have a walking bass line that follows the scales, and we have melodic bass lines, which are creative. They're a counterpoint. They have movement and contour to a song. We have arpeggiated bass, which plays a note of a chord one at a time in a pattern, which is just one note. And we've got the 808, which you can have glide or no glide. You can have saturation or no saturation. So remember, your bass lines are super important. They don't have to be complicated, but you always want to try to find the right sound for the occasion. Okay, so now that we've actually shown you some different kinds of bass lines, let me show you how to make bass lines. It's actually really easy, and with Studio One, we have all the tools. So we learned about the different types of bass lines that you can make. We have static bass lines, which holds a one note or a simple repetitive pattern. We have root note bass lines, which mostly play the root notes of each chord. We have melodic bass lines, which move stepwise through a scale of tones, scale tones often in. We have a melodic bass line that has its own melodic contour that moves through chord tones. It's like a counter melody and can often be the star of the song. We have a walking bass line, which moves stepwise through the scales, is often associated with jazz. We have an arpeggiating bass line. We have arpeggiating bass lines, which plays notes of a chord one at a time in a pattern. In our case, it was just playing one note in a specific arpeggiated pattern. And we have the 808, which is a sub-frequency bass, and we actually enabled glide. Let me show you guys how to make a bass line. Making bass lines are very easy, especially if you know your chords and chord progression and your scale. Okay, so what I did is that I literally went on a website where you can generate your own chord progressions, and I found two chords. I made a 2-chord progression. Then I imported it into Studio One, and then I enabled my chord track, and I just simply dragged and dropped my chords from the chord instrument to the chords global track. This will tell me that I have an F suspended 2 and an A minor 7, which are just some cool funky chords, but those have very little to do with how to make the bass line. So to make the bass line, all you need to really focus in is the root note of the chord. Well, Mr. Ryman, what is the root note of the chord? Oh, okay, I'm glad that you asked. If you look right here, this says F suspended 2. Well, what is F suspended 2? It's just a series of different notes being played together, but F is the root note. Okay? And on my second chord, it says A minor 7. A minor 7 is just a series of notes being played together. The root note is A. All right, this is very important. If you have minors, the root note is, there is no minor note, so it's just simply going to be A, because I have a F major scale here. Okay, well this comes in, and I'll show you with, okay, here's my static bass line, Well, what notes did I use for my static bass line? Simply F, all F. Okay, so what did I use? And you can see that they're monophonic. One note, one note, one note, one note, one note, one note. No notes overlap in my bass lines. You have one note that's playing, no overlapping. Let's look at my root note bass line. So same thing, right here I have F, just following the chord, and up here I have an A following the second chord. Very basic. I made it into a relatively cool pattern, and that is, let's say if you're not very good at bass lines, if you follow that, your bass line's going to be just fine. Okay. Now, if you want to be a little bit more creative, I made a melodic bass line. A melodic bass line actually follows the scale. Now, this is really, really helpful when you're trying to add some character to your bass. I usually use the Atom to make my bass lines, which I can just set my Atom to whatever scale my chord progression is in. You can also see it down here. So I have it in F major, and right now that's all of these notes in my melodic bass line are following the scale. Okay, if I can click here, you can see that they are all in the scale. If you are making a bass line in the scale of the key of your chord progression, you really can't hit a wrong note. It might not sound great, but it's not necessarily going to be incorrect. Okay, so those are the fundamentals. That's where the magic happens with the bass line, is having it in the scale and knowing the chords, the root notes. All right, and now if you look at my walking bass line, this is literally just going up and down the scale. This is really popular in jazz. And if we look at my arpeggiating bass line, well, what's going on here? I just literally played a note at F, and the arpeggiator did the rest until I played the next note, which is at A. And then I wanted to add just a little character, so I pressed C, and the arpeggiator did all of the rest of the work. And the same thing goes in with your 808. Everything needs to be in harmony with your chords and melody. Okay, so when you're making bass lines, just remember scale, root notes of chords. All right, so I can't wait to hear your bass lines, and I'll see you soon.